This is the Moto G51 5G. It has a focus on multimedia consumption, so it arrives with a much better screen than its predecessor, the G50, even if the rest of the hardware is quite similar. It's safe to say that this is Motorola's main budget 5G capable phone for 2022, unless they release something else. So how does it fare when put up to scrutiny? I'm Angie for GSM Arena, and this is our review of the Moto G51 5G. The Moto G51 has a unibody plastic chassis in a matte indigo blue color. It's not the most premium design in the world, but at this price it doesn't really need to be. While the back does catch the occasional fingerprint, they're barely visible in most conditions. Also, the camera module on the back is rather flat compared to most, and the phone doesn't wobble on a table. The back surface is surprisingly grippy and it's nicely curved, so it feels satisfying in the hand. It lacks sharp or protruding edges, and the phone feels seamless. At 208 grams, it might be a little heavy for some. That said, the handling issue that might get annoying has to do with button placement. The volume rocker and the Google Assistant buttons are placed a little too high to be comfortable. As for the power button and fingerprint reader combo underneath them, well, it's fast and responsive and unlocks the device with a brief touch. The G51 has a water-repellent design and an IP52 rating, so it'll be fine on a rainy day. On the left side of the phone, you'll find a hybrid SIM card tray, just in case the base 64 or 128 gigabytes of storage isn't enough for you. On the front, there is a big centered hole punch, and the bezels on the top and bottom aren't exactly thin, but it's to be expected at this price. The large 6.8-inch IPS LCD display has a Full HD resolution and a 120Hz refresh rate. The refresh rate management is handled well, and if you aren't touching the display or if you're watching a video, the system will dial down the refresh rate to 60 Hz. That said, with this phone's chipset, high refresh rate gaming might be a bit of a stretch. The panel also doesn't support HDR. For its class, it had a solid 595 nits of max brightness, which should be enough for comfortable outdoor use. The color accuracy isn't great in the saturated mode, and whites tend to be bluish. The natural color preset makes white a bit pinkish, but it has vastly better color accuracy. As expected, the phone has a single downward-facing speaker. It got an average rating on our audio test. The quality isn't anything to write home about either, and the G51 sounds flat overall, and distortion creeps in at higher volumes. You should also know that the phone supports NFC for contactless payments. The Moto G51 has a large 5000 mAh battery. Its chipset is known for being power efficient, so we were pleased but not surprised at its 124-hour endurance rating on our battery life tests. While the Indian version of the phone gets a 20-watt charger, the global variant has a 10-watt one. This makes for slower charging. In 30 minutes, we only got from 0 to 26%, while a full charge took 2 hours and 35 minutes. The Moto G51 5G uses the Snapdragon 480 Plus chipset in either 4, 6, or 8 gigs of RAM. It's a smidge faster than the G50, but in general, there are plenty of other devices out there with more powerful chipsets. It'll do for day-to-day tasks, but it's not a phone for heavy gaming. Motorola launches with Android 11 instead of Android 12, but it should be updated in the near future. As usual, Motorola has a very stock Android with the exception of its Moto app, which allows for some personalization and some additional features like karate chop for the flashlight, peak display, and attentive display. Peak display allows for the lock screen to wake up once the phone detects motion, while the attentive display uses the front camera to detect your face and keep the display running regardless of your screen timeout settings. The Moto G51 has a 50-megapixel main camera, an 8-megapixel ultrawide, and a 2-megapixel macro cam. It's the same setup as what's on the Moto G71. During the day, the main camera captures photos with punchy but not over-the-top colors. The shots are sharp with okay dynamic range and controlled noise. It's on par with other phones in its class, except for when the software goes for higher exposures. We didn't expect much from the ultrawide, and it fit our expectations. Shots are slightly softer than the competition, and as a whole, they lack dynamic range and detail. Colors were nice though. The macro camera performed as expected, and getting a sharp image was challenging with the fixed focus. Contrast and detail were lacking too. Portraits had believable bokeh, excellent dynamic range, and had good edge detection. The subject's face is always well exposed and colors are vibrant. We did notice a lot of noise though. Low light shots from the main camera without the night mode switched on are a bit soft and lack detail, but looked decent overall. They had accurate colors, good contrast, and generally wide dynamic range. Detail was nicely retained in the shadows too. The night mode captured more colorful shots with improved contrast and boosted sharpness. Clipped highlights are taken care of, but we noticed it was more likely to go overboard with exposure in general. There's also quite a bit of fine grain from the sharpness. There's no night mode for the ultra-wide, which is a shame because images in low light are muddy, lack contrast and dynamic range, and have washed out colors. The 13 megapixel front camera on the global version of the phone captures selfies that are decent enough. They have good dynamic range and a nice level of detail. Colors could be more vibrant and skin tones were often paler than in real life. As the light gets lower, sharpness and detail deteriorate quickly. The phone can capture only Full HD videos with its main and ultra-wide cameras. Footage taken with the main camera could be sharper and the dynamic range could be wider. Highlights in the background are clipped and colors are washed out. Footage from the ultra-wide is comparably lackluster and it has more noise to boot. Motorola stands out as a good 5G option in the sub €250 part of the market. If 5G is a priority for you, this phone has a nice screen, good battery life, a decent camera, and a water-repellent design. That said, if 5G is not a priority, there are way better alternatives, like the Poco X3 Pro. They have better chipsets, better cameras, Gorilla Glass 6, and a host of other features this phone simply doesn't have. 5G hasn't rolled out everywhere either, so even if you have to settle for a 4G capable phone, it's likely that you're not going to miss out on too much for the next couple of years. If you're looking for a 5G capable budget phone, then we do recommend this one, but for most people, it's not going to be the optimal choice. Thank you for watching everyone, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.